I want to start with the Lakers though, because I actually haven't podcasted since or didn't podcast specifically about the Russell Westbrook trade. I think what they kind of did there, their minimum signings were fine, like Kent Bazemore, Wayne Ellington, Trevor Ariza. They get Melo now. They bring back Talon Horton Tucker. They have shooters now. I would say the only lights out shooters are Wayne Ellington, and is that like it? I'm trying to think of who, like Trevor Ariza can shoot it, but he's like up and down there. Uh, I don't. Malik Monk. All right, he shot over 40% from three. Like that was a very interesting signing, but are you playing those guys in the playoffs? Wayne Ellington probably not. And the thing with Wayne Ellington too, and I mentioned this on Twitter when it happened, he's not just some chill in the corner stroke spot up threes guy. He wants to get his shots in motion, coming off handoffs and stuff. The Lakers, like LeBron James's teams, typically just don't do that. Maybe they will now, but with Russell Westbrook specifically, I don't want to dismiss it. I think they've clearly raised their floor because the Lakers have been essentially a disaster in the non-LeBron minutes since he's been there. Last year with Dennis Schroeder, their half-court efficiency was in the 25th percentile when he played without LeBron. I think Westbrook, he is the most erratic, most inefficient jump shooter perhaps that we've ever seen. He can still anchor those lineups better than anyone else they've had in place. But I don't think that you've necessarily nudged your ceiling in the right direction with the pairing of LeBron, Westbrook, and AD, because Westbrook has now shown in OKC, in Houston, and in Washington, like playing off the ball is not his thing. And we can say that playing next to LeBron will make it click for him. But for me, it's more like, why wouldn't it have clicked when he went to Houston with his really good friend James Harden, where the Rockets had to end up punting on center play entirely? And there are just so many questions here. I think they rebounded nicely because I made a joke about their shooting, but their propensity for skirting the use of their best spending tool or best talent acquisition tools on actual shooting continues to amaze me, because that's what you should just do for LeBron James, is surround him with a ton of shooting. And I don't want to say, well, I will say I would have went the Buddy Hield route. The Westbrook in a vacuum, the talent play, yeah, sure, do it. But I'm just so curious to see how they function from here. And I don't think that, again, I think you can give LeBron more rest now, and maybe you could place more stock in the minutes without him. But I don't really know what this does for them when we're talking about a playoff series. And like you said, they might have been the favorites had they really done nothing. Maybe just re-sign Dennis Schroeder, who, by the way, remains on the open market as we record this. They could still just technically bring him back or sign and trade him somewhere. So I like their minimum signings more than I like their offseason's biggest move, which is just a weird place to wind up in.
No, I agree with pretty much all of that. I think, like, Russell Westbrook's defining characteristic is he is uncompromising, and I think it's not realistic to say that he's going to change the way he plays. One, because like that's just not how he operates. One of the things that makes him great is like he's just relentless in wanting to play a certain way, and he's great at it. But also because like he just can't. Like he's not capable of being a different type of player. I agree that it raises their regular season floor, and I would go even farther. I think like, well, the counterpoint. I would go even farther on the counterpoint and say that the Lakers' entire goal needs to be and is, how do we win a title, which this requires being built to win playoff games. And Russell Westbrook, it has been demonstrated, and every team does this. You scheme against guys that can't shoot and that compromise spacing. And if the Lakers insist on playing centers, and Anthony Davis at the four, maybe they'll change that. But they are not going to have spacing, and Westbrook's going to get ignored. It's going to hurt them in the playoffs. I don't feel like that's too harsh of a thing to say. Westbrook is a great player at what he does, but in a playoff setting, if you have an obvious weakness, and as you said, there has never been a worse high volume 3-point shooter than Russell Westbrook. Like that's a weakness. So I don't think I think he might actively hurt their chances at winning a title. And I don't know that, and he helps it. Like it's a balancing act. Like he helps in that maybe LeBron stays healthier, Davis stays healthier, some of these older guys stay healthy. Just whatever. He's going to eat a bunch of innings in theory. Although physically he's breaking down a lot. He quit getting to the rim last year. That's a big deal. But yeah, I think they did well to address needs with the very limited avenues to add players that they had. I don't know that that's enough to offset a point guard that can't shoot that's going to play probably every meaningful minute of their playoff run. So yeah, I don't know. I think I kind of think we might have the Nets to blame for this because they sort of like succeeded in just throwing together top end names and talent that seemed to overlap. And Harden was sort of a little like Westbrook, and like, can he change the way he plays? The answer was yes. But I think the Nets are the exception. And if you just start throwing superstars together, regardless of fit or how they affect your ultimate specific goal of winning a title, I think it's not the best idea. The Nets are the exception and not the rule. And even the Nets didn't. I mean, they were injured, but they fell short too.
And just to drive that point home, and it's not just a Westbrook problem, but 61 players averaged at least 5 pull-up jumpers per game last year. Westbrook's effective field goal percentage among that 61 player group ranked 57th, and Anthony Davis is ranked 58th. So that's a real problem I have to confront. That said, I don't want to shit on everything they've did. Right. We both like their minimum signings. Whose was your favorite of just all the minimum guys that they got?
I think, well, this is weird. Like, I think Ellington makes the most sense because like, God, they need shooting, and that's what Wayne Ellington does. But I also kind of like Dwight Howard coming back because he's been in a per minute small role, like really good the last couple of years. He fouls too much, and he obviously doesn't space or anything, but he's an effective defender. I think if you're counting on Marc Gasol to eat a lot of minutes so Davis doesn't have to play center, like Gasol might be done now. Like, I love Marc Gasol, but like, I just don't know that he's going to anchor your defense anymore. I think he just can be kind of played off the floor. Howard's got more bounce. He might matter.
They're
all at least fine. Like, Bazemore's fine. I mean, he can be a end of the rotation guy. Ariza, I guess. I mean, is Ariza 37?
He might be 47 for all I know. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, well, it's not a minimum, but I think Kendrick Nunn 2 for $10 million, like that. I mean, he might play major minutes, and just being someone that theoretically can run around for a while without keeling over. I think that's going to be a factor.
Kendrick Nunn does intrigue me, but because he also prefers to operate with the ball in his hands, the fit there is curious. I like the Monk signing for that reason. I'm also curious to see how much they will lean on him. I think I like the Melo addition because you're going to play him, and he shot the ball well from 3, really well in Portland. They let him indulge his inner mellowness a lot in those possessions. I'm sure on some possessions, I'm sure the Lakers will do the same. But I think it infers a commitment to playing Anthony Davis the 5 more in the regular season. And we've always shown they've always been willing to do that in the playoffs. And yeah, maybe it's not as important to do that during the regular season. I would argue with the addition of Russell Westbrook, it does become really important to do it during the regular season now. And you don't sign Carmelo Anthony to play him at like the 3 right now. And so maybe it's a situation where it's Davis, Melo, and LeBron are just your front line, which is like Anthony Davis is still the center in that instance. And just based off how Melo has shown that what he did in Portland, I know he was a liability at points. I know he's still divisive. I'm not saying he's clearly going to be bad on defense, and there are going to be shots he takes, the jab steps, the post ups that you don't want to see. There are going to be moments where it's like, oh, okay. But I think he's done well in a complementary capacity over the past 2 years. And I think just what that can do for some of the Lakers lineups in terms of nudging Davis to the 5, I like at least what that signals. But maybe I'm misreading that situation completely wrong.
Well, I think for a team that has had a hard time scoring in the half court, I think Melo and Monk and Nunn are all guys that, like, they're not efficient offensive players, but like, you can throw it to any of them and say, make something, get me like a 42% shot, as the shot clock's winding down and we have nothing going. Like, there's value in that, especially in the playoffs when, like, sometimes that's the best you're going to do. So yeah, I think all those guys, the Lakers, I don't know if who won the offseason or not, or if we even care, but or at least free agency, because the Westbrook thing I don't like. But the Lakers had as good a free agency as really anybody.